There are moments in life when pride walks into a room long before humility ever has the chance, and that night was exactly such a moment. The ballroom shimmered beneath giant chandeliers, their crystal teardrops scattering gold across champagne glasses and polished marble floors. The city's elite gathered like jewels in motion: politicians, tech moguls, media giants wrapped in silk and diamonds, each one aware of their status, each one convinced the universe tilted slightly in their favor. And in the middle of it all walked a woman who did not need glitter to shine. Amara glided through the grand hall with quiet dignity, her chocolate-toned skin glowing beneath soft amber light, wearing an elegant emerald gown that flowed like royalty. Not luxury bought, but dignity earned. She was there to support her husband, Ethan Mercer, a name whispered in business circles for turning a near-bankrupt logistics company into a global empire worth billions. But Amara never liked the spotlight. Tonight was his night, yet fate had a way of writing scenes even the proudest aristocrats never saw coming. She stood near the floral arch, breathing in roses and jasmine, smiling politely as wealthy guests exchanged shallow words. Some smiled back warmly, others merely nodded, and a few, as always, saw her first by her skin, not her soul. Still, she held her peace because she had promised her mother years ago that her success would be defined not by the ignorance she encountered, but by the grace she carried. Across the room, a woman in a glittering silver gown watched Amara with narrowed eyes. Victoria Langford. Old wealth, older arrogance. She carried generational privilege like a crown, believing kindness was optional and respect something reserved for those she deemed worthy. To her, anyone darker than champagne gold was staff, and anyone who didn't flaunt power was beneath her. Victoria had never seen Amara before, and in her world, unfamiliar faces meant employees, not guests. "Ridiculous how they let staff mingle tonight," she muttered to her friend, lips twisting with disdain. Her friend murmured something in response, but Victoria had already made up her mind. She strutted across the ballroom, her heels clicking like judgment, and stopped right behind Amara. "Excuse me," she hissed, not to greet, not to ask, but to command. Amara turned, calm and poised. "Yes," she replied gently. Victoria looked her up and down, ignoring the elegance, ignoring the poise, seeing only what her prejudice permitted. "We need more champagne at table 3. And fix your dress properly." "It's too glamorous for a server." A few heads turned, they heard the tone, they saw the arrogance, but silence often clings to power, and nobody wanted to interrupt the spectacle. Amara's brows lifted slightly. Not in anger, but in wonder. Wonder at how small a soul could be wrapped in such expensive fabric. She breathed in patience. "I'm not staff," she said quietly, still respectful. "I am a guest." But Victoria scoffed, flicking her hair. "Of course you are," she sneered sarcastically. "Look, sweetheart, just do your job. We all know why people like you end up in places like this." Her words didn't cut skin. Amara had grown beyond being wounded by ignorance, but they bruised the dignity of the night. Before Amara could respond, Victoria reached forward, grabbed the delicate silk of Amara's gown at the shoulder, and yanked with a violent rip. Gasps rose like wind across the room. The tear was long, cruel, intentional. Victoria stood smirking, satisfied, triumphant in her cruelty, convinced she had put a maid in her place. "There, now you look like you belong," she said sharply. "Get back to work." But then the ballroom shifted. A silence fell so deep that even the orchestra seemed to choke mid-note. Eyes widened. Phones lifted subtly, and behind Victoria, slowly, like a storm forming in still air, stood Ethan Mercer, Amara's husband. And not just her husband, one of the most powerful men in the room. His grey eyes weren't loud, but the fury inside them was thunder held tightly behind ribs carved from discipline and restraint. He had seen everything. Every word, every gesture, every shred of indignity. For a moment the world shrank into stillness, as if time itself held its breath. Ethan stepped forward, not rushing, not shouting, but moving with the controlled force of a man whose silence was more dangerous than any scream. Victoria, unaware, kept smirking at Amara. "Next time, don't pretend to be what you're not." Ethan's voice then sliced through the stillness like a blade of ice. "She didn't pretend," he said, low and steady. "But you just did." Victoria froze. She turned slowly, confusion breaking into panic as she recognized him. Mr. Mercer, she stuttered, cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I didn't realize— But the truth is, she had realized exactly what she thought she saw. She expected obedience, subservience, invisibility. What she saw instead was power wrapped in grace. Ethan didn't even look at her yet. His eyes were on Amara, gentle, apologetic, his hand reaching slowly to touch hers as if repairing invisible fractures. "Are you all right?" he whispered. Amara nodded, though her heart trembled, not from shame but from the weight of the moment. The room still watched, judging her, defending her. She didn't know. Didn't care. Ethan finally turned to Victoria, his expression unreadable. Dangerous not because of rage, but because of the control masking it. "You tore my wife's dress," he said quietly. Victoria blinked rapidly. I didn't know she was my wife," he finished for her, "or a human being deserving basic respect." Her mouth opened, but no words came. He leaned forward just enough for his voice to land like a warning carved in stone. "You will apologize. Right now." Victoria's face twisted in humiliation. Apology was foreign to her tongue. People like her thought remorse was beneath them. But power, real power, was in front of her, staring through her facade. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry," she mumbled weakly. But Amara lifted her hand, soft but firm. "No," she said. "Not like that. Not because you're embarrassed, but because you understand." Victoria looked stunned. And for the first time in her life, perhaps, she felt small, not because someone belittled her, but because she had belittled another and now faced the truth of it. Before anyone could speak again, the ballroom doors opened and the event organizer hurried in, breathless. "Mr. Mercer," he called nervously, "they're ready for your award presentation." Whispers surged. "The event?" "The honor. The Billionaire Award." And suddenly the crowd realized they had just witnessed the wife of the honoree being humiliated. Some faces flushed with guilt. Others looked away, ashamed of their silence. But Amara, even in that torn gown, held her chin high. Her dignity wasn't fabric. It wasn't image. It was her. Ethan placed his jacket around her shoulders, not as a cover of shame, but a cloak of honor, and whispered, "Stay with me." As they walked toward the stage together, the room parted like the sea, not from reverence but from the weight of realization. Tonight wasn't merely a celebration. It had become a test of character for everyone present. As they reached the stage, Ethan paused, holding Amara's hand, his eyes burning with a decision that would shake the hall and rewrite reputations forever. And that decision, that moment, hadn't even arrived yet. But when it did, it would turn this night into a story the wealthy elite would whisper about for years. And as the stage lights rose, Amara exhaled slowly. She had faced humiliation before. This was just another mask falling off another proud face, yet she felt something deeper stirring. Not vengeance, not bitterness, but destiny. Because some wounds don't break you. They carve you. And this cut dress? This moment, it wasn't tragedy. It was the beginning of a transformation nobody in that room was prepared for, especially the woman who started it all. Ethan stepped toward the microphone, the auditorium waiting, not for an award speech, but for truth and justice. And whatever storm he was about to unleash, and somewhere in the crowd, Victoria Langford finally felt the cold sting of a fate she never imagined, the consequences of her own arrogance tightening around her like a noose. The night wasn't finished with her, not even close. And Amara? The world was about to learn exactly who she really was. The applause that should have erupted when Ethan approached the microphone did not come. Instead, the room buzzed with uneasy silence, every breath held hostage by what had just unfolded. The award plaque gleamed on the podium, but Ethan did not touch it. The presenter, nervously shifting beside him, offered the rehearsed introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor business pioneer Ethan Mercer for outstanding global impact." But Ethan raised one hand, stopping him mid-sentence, a gesture that rippled tension through the ballroom like a lightning strike. His eyes scanned the crowd, his voice calm but edged in steel. "Tonight," he began, "I was meant to speak about business success, about rising from nothing to build something meaningful." His voice didn't shake, but a quiet fury simmered underneath, the kind born from watching dignity attacked. But I cannot talk about success, he continued, while ignoring what just happened in this room. The audience stiffened. Some looked at their shoes. Some at Victoria, who stood pale, trembling, her proud posture crumbling in front of strangers who once envied her. Amara stood beside Ethan, his jacket still around her torn gown, graceful even in discomfort. "My wife," Ethan said slowly, "the woman who has walked beside me through every storm, was humiliated here. Not for what she did, not for who she is, but because someone decided her skin, her elegance, her presence did not match their expectation." His voice thickened and the crowd squirmed. Some murmured apologies under breaths, others shifted shamefully. But Ethan wasn't done. "And many of you watched," he added softly, painfully, "and did nothing." The truth settled heavy, exposing cowardice dressed in diamonds. Ethan looked at Amara then, pride shining like armor. "Let me make something unmistakably clear." He turned back to the crowd. "She is not just my wife. She is the smartest, kindest, and strongest person I know. She holds degrees from 2 Ivy League universities. She runs our charity foundation, managing programs that have helped thousands of children receive education and medical care." People gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some didn't know. They assumed. They judged. "She is elegance without arrogance," Ethan finished. "Power without cruelty. Something money can't buy." The room faded into quiet awe. He then lifted the award plaque slowly, looking at it as if it were suddenly meaningless. "If this award represents a world where arrogance is celebrated and humanity ignored," he said, "then it means nothing." Gasps, whispers, disbelief. Ethan placed the award back, not gently, but firmly enough that the wooden base echoed across the hall like a gavel pronouncing judgment. The presenter's mouth hung open. Cameras clicked furiously. "I didn't build my empire to sit silently as prejudice thrives," Ethan declared. "We rise not by stepping on others, but by lifting them." The crowd stood stunned, caught between admiration and shock, because billionaires didn't give speeches like this. They didn't challenge their own circles. They protected their status. But Ethan was not protecting status. He was protecting honor. Victoria trembled, makeup cracking beneath tears she never expected to feel in public. Her husband, Daniel Langford, one of the city's most influential bankers, rushed to her side, gripping her arm. His face was red with embarrassment and anger, not at Ethan, but at her. "What did you do?" he hissed through clenched teeth. She opened her mouth, but words fled like frightened birds. Daniel looked crushed beneath the weight of ruin. He knew reputation could crumble faster than fortunes could be built, and tonight his wife had lit the fuse herself. Suddenly a reporter's voice rang out through the hall. "Mr. Mercer, are you saying discrimination still exists in elite spaces like this?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "I don't need to say it," he replied. "You just witnessed it. Phones shut up. The live stream spiked. People at home watching whispered, 'Wow,' at screens, while wealthy guests realized their polished world wasn't safe from overdue. Truth? Then Ethan did something no one expected. He stepped aside and looked at Amara. "Do you want to say something?" he asked softly. She hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing her voice mattered now. Slowly she stepped to the microphone, every eye following her, every doubt dissolving. "I don't need an apology for what happened to me," she began, her voice calm yet powerful. "I grew up understanding that sometimes people choose ignorance over compassion. But I do need this room and anyone watching to understand something." She looked around, holding them all with a quiet strength. "Respect isn't earned through titles or money, or the circles you walk in." Victoria flinched, tears gathering like storm clouds. "Respect," Amara continued, "is a reflection of your character, not someone else's appearance." A hush fell deeper still. "I'm not angry," she said softly. "I'm disappointed for her, because hatred shrinks the heart that carries it." Victoria collapsed into a chair, sobbing quietly, her world collapsing in front of judges she never expected to face. Some might say she deserved humiliation. Others might say karma came fast. But Amara, she didn't want revenge. She wanted change. Suddenly applause erupted. Not polite, not forced, real, human, the kind that honored dignity over wealth. Even those who had been silent clapped, relieved to choose courage now, even if late. Ethan wrapped his arm around Amara, pride and love radiating off him like warmth after winter. The award did not matter anymore. What did matter was the shift, a crack in a culture too comfortable with silent prejudice. The orchestra began playing again to ease tension, but the atmosphere was forever altered. People approached Amara, not with pity but admiration, offering genuine apologies, asking to support her foundation, promising effort rather than excuses. But while the hall buzzed with new energy, Victoria sat like a fallen statue, and Daniel glared at her, torn between rage and humiliation. "You've destroyed us," he whispered fiercely. "Do you realize who you just insulted?" Victoria shook, voice cracking. I thought she was—" "You thought wrong," he snapped. "And now I will pay for your ignorance." But not only him. Their investments were tied to Ethan's ventures, their social standing twisted around their image. And in one foolish act, she hadn't just torn a dress. She had torn her own pedestal apart. The music echoed, but she felt none of it. She only felt the collapse of a world built on pride and illusion. Meanwhile, Amara and Ethan moved through the crowd, receiving hugs, respect, and sincere admiration. Someone whispered, "You are an inspiration," and Amara smiled, humble as ever. She leaned close to Ethan and whispered, "I didn't expect all of this." He kissed her forehead gently. "You didn't ask for it, but you deserved it." They left the ballroom together, hands intertwined, stepping into the night air as if the world itself exhaled with them. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters crowded. "Mrs. Mercer, what message do you have for people who face prejudice daily?" Amara answered without hesitation, "Rise with grace, not bitterness. Your worth isn't defined by anyone's blindness." The crowd cheered. And just like that, she wasn't just a private woman supporting her husband. She was a symbol, a voice, a reminder that dignity doesn't need permission to shine. They entered the limousine, the doors closing softly behind them. Silence filled the space. Not empty silence, but sacred peace after battle. Amara laughed lightly, still overwhelmed. "That was something." Ethan looked at her with awe. "You turned humiliation into power," he said. "I just stood beside you." She chuckled softly. "That's all I ever need." But while they shared a quiet moment of triumph, neither knew that the story wasn't finished. Because humility wins hearts, but truth also exposes enemies. And someone, somewhere in that ballroom, was not celebrating their grace. Someone watched with envy burning like poison and whispered, "This isn't over." And that whisper would soon turn into a storm. But for now, the night ended with hope, with strength, and with a lesson carved into the marble halls of privilege. You never know who stands before you. And sometimes the world elevates exactly the one someone tried to tear down. The next morning, the world woke up different. Headlines lit up every screen. News anchors rehearsed shocked tones. Social media burned with fire and praise. And the elegant injustice inside the ballroom became a global lesson overnight. Billionaire's wife humiliated for being black. Responds with grace trended in a dozen countries. Amara's calm strength became a symbol, inspiring millions who had ever swallowed pain quietly. Ethan's refusal to accept prejudice became a rallying cry. But not every heart watching was inspired. While many souls found humility in the moment, some hearts hardened, twisted by pride bruised in public. And amongst them, one dangerous seed of spite bloomed, Daniel Langford. Unlike his wife, whose cruelty had been impulsive, his was strategic, sharp, and fueled not only by embarrassment, but by fear. The Mercers were powerful already, but now their influence had multiplied. Investors called Ethan, offering more capital. Philanthropists reached out to Amara. Interview requests poured in. The Mercers didn't chase attention. Attention chased them. Meanwhile, the Langfords' phones were filled with silence. Little red notifications that meant partnerships frozen, invitations revoked, meetings postponed indefinitely. Daniel glared at headlines, fury simmering under a thin skin of control. "We had one mistake," he hissed to Victoria, as she sat pale and silent in their home, tears dried into regret. "One mistake, and now we are poison." Victoria whispered, "I ruined everything," but he cut her off with a cold whisper. "No, he ruined us." He chose to make a spectacle. And in that moment, Daniel didn't see his wife's cruelty, only his pride's injury. That was the day resentment sharpened into revenge. Unaware of the storm forming elsewhere, Amara and Ethan spent the morning peacefully, away from cameras, sipping coffee on their balcony overlooking the quiet city skyline. Amara wore a soft robe, The same grace from last night rested in her posture, but now her eyes carried a new light, not pride but purpose. Ethan touched her hand gently. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her thoughts stretched far beyond their home. "Last night wasn't just about me," she said. "It was about every person judged before being seen." Ethan smiled, but a sadness lingered. "You shouldn't have had to carry that weight," she squeezed his hand. "But I did. And maybe it meant something." He looked emotional for a moment. Ethan, the powerful man, brought to tenderness by the woman who grounded his ambition in compassion. "We should do something," Amara said suddenly. "Create a program. For young women facing discrimination, scholarships, mentorship, protection." Ethan's eyes brightened. "Then we will," he promised. "Not just talk change, build it." She leaned against his shoulder, warmth and gratitude in the silence between them. They didn't know it yet, but that conversation would soon change thousands of lives. Yet while they planned to build bridges, someone else built traps. Daniel called his lawyers, his PR people, his allies, but doors slammed faster than he could knock. Desperation replaced arrogance. "If Ethan rises higher from this," he muttered, "we disappear forever." His mind spiraled into old bitterness. They turned on us so quickly. They chose their side, and so Daniel decided if he couldn't reclaim the spotlight, he would pull the Mercers into darkness. "Find something," he ordered his private investigator. "Anything to discredit him." Lies began moving like snakes in grass, but fate has a way of protecting those who stand for goodness. While Daniel plotted shadows, light moved louder. That evening, the Mercers hosted a small private gathering, not for celebration, but to ground themselves. Close friends arrived with flowers, warm embraces, tears, support. Among them was Maya, Amara's childhood friend. "You made us proud," she whispered, hugging her tightly. "You became who we prayed one of us would one day be." Amara smiled, humbled. "No," she said softly. "We all rise, just sometimes one stands first." They shared laughter, warmth, healing. Meanwhile, Daniel fumed in his dark office as photos of the Mercers smiling appeared online, as if they hadn't been wounded at all. His investigator returned with shaking hands. "Sir, there's nothing. They're clean. They're respected. They do real charity. She's beloved." This truth infuriated Daniel more. He slammed his fist on the table. "Nobody is untouchable," he snapped. "But the universe doesn't bend for bitterness. It bends toward truth, and truth would find him soon enough." 2 days later, fate delivered justice in a form neither expected. A private letter reached Amara from the board of directors of the Global Humanitarian Council. "Mrs. Mercer," it read, "your grace and integrity have inspired millions. We humbly request to honor you with the Humanitarian Excellence Award." She stared at the paper, heart slowly filling with disbelief. Ethan walked in, saw her expression. "What happened?" She handed him the letter. His eyes widened with pride. "You deserve this," he whispered. She chuckled tearfully. "All I did was stand still." "Sometimes," Ethan murmured, "standing is the hardest thing to do." That evening, when the public announcement was made, Daniel saw it. His face grew pale, then red, then defeated. While his family crumbled under scandal, Amara ascended through grace. Karma didn't come with anger, it came with honor. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. A black car pulled up at the Langford estate. Victoria, still hollow-eyed, answered the door, to find Amara standing there, elegant, calm, radiant. Victoria froze in shock, shame choking her. Why are you here?" she stammered. Amara looked at her kindly, not with victory but with humanity. "Because pain teaches lessons anger never will," she said gently. Victoria's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I was horrible. I lost myself." Tears spilled freely as she collapsed into apology. "I judged you without seeing you. I was cruel. I don't deserve forgiveness." Amara placed a steady hand on hers. "Forgiveness is not deserved," she whispered. "It's given." Victoria sobbed harder, not from humiliation now, but from release. "Thank you," she choked out. "I will change." "I promise," Amara nodded. "Make sure you do. Not to rebuild your status, but to rebuild your soul. That was grace. Power not to destroy, but to restore." While the women reconciled, Daniel watched from the staircase, humiliated, but also struck speechless by the mercy unfolding downstairs. Something inside him cracked, the part that believed power was dominance, not dignity. Later that night, alone in his study, he dialed a number. "Cancel the investigation," he said quietly, "and send the Mercers a letter. We withdraw from all deals, and I offer apology." The assistant hesitated, shocked. Daniel swallowed hard. "It's time to be on the right side," he muttered. For once. Sometimes hitting the bottom teaches humility no success ever could. Back at the Mercer home, Ethan wrapped an arm around Amara as they sat beneath the stars. "You changed her," he whispered. Amara shook her head. "No, she changed herself. I just gave her a mirror." Ethan kissed her hand. "You are extraordinary." She leaned into him, whispering back, "We rise by lifting others, even those who once tried to pull us down." Silence again, but this one peaceful, not heavy. Tomorrow she would receive her award, start her scholarship program, turn pain into progress. Tomorrow she would inspire countless lives. Tonight she simply breathed, held, loved, victorious not by triumph but by kindness. And so the world didn't remember the ballroom for diamonds or speeches, but for courage. Not for wealth, but for character. And when people whispered the story years later, they didn't talk about the torn dress, but the woman who turned threads into wings. And to everyone watching this story right now, remember this: strength is not loud. Grace is not weakness. And the most powerful revenge is to live in a way your enemies could never imitate. Now tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if this final chapter touched your heart, hit like, share the story, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread stories that uplift, empower, and inspire. Because this world doesn't just need wealth. It needs wisdom with compassion. Stay tuned for more powerful stories. You are seen, you are valued, and your dignity is your crown. Never let anyone tear it.